Okay.
All right, we call this September 14th, 2023 meeting of the UMED Technical Advisory Committee to order. It is 2:31 p.m. Aaron, could you do the roll call, please?
Of course. Ryan. Here. Jamie Acton. Here. Russ Oswald from Melinda Kohlhaas.
Here.
Brad Coy. Here. Ben White. Doesn't seem to be here at this point. Luke Boland. Here. Steve Rebuffo on the phone.
Here.
We did hear him earlier, so he's here. Ben White.
Sorry. Matt's present virtually.
Okay, thank you. Yemi Yemini.
Present.
Brian Lindemood.
Also present.
And Steve Rafuse. Here. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. And another record show. Ben White made it just in time for the roll call. 2:32. Okay, Aaron, will you also do the public involvement announcement?
Of course. AMAT's committee meetings are open to the public, and the public is provided an opportunity to comment at each meeting. Business items are first presented by staff or consultants. Then the committee is given an opportunity to ask questions. After the committee has asked questions, the business items, the public is invited to formally comment. Each participant will have 3 minutes to speak on their topic. A couple of housekeeping items. If you're joining us virtually and you're not a member of the committee, please turn off your camera when you're not speaking on an item. If you're joining us by phone, to mute and unmute the microphone, press *6. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. First item is to approve the agenda. Do we have a motion for approving the agenda? Move to approve. Mr. Lyon made the motion, and Mr. Lemieux did a second. Do we have any changes that are needed to the agenda?
We do have one change, but bear with me. We need to add a new one for 6C under project and plan updates to give an update on the STIP and the MTP. And I'll kind of explain more as we get to that item. It's to talk about, the projects in the STIP, the new STIP that are not in the MTP, and what path AMATS is taking to correct that issue.
Okay, I'm going to call that 6C STIP and MTP update. Okay. Are there any other changes? Okay, let's see. So with that, we have a move and a second. Does it need to be a friendly amendment to include that, or do we do an amendment? Is that right?
I think you can just approve it as amended.
Okay. Are there any objections to approving the agenda as amended? Okay, hearing none, the agenda as amended is approved. Next, we have our minutes from our last meeting. Do we have a motion for approving our August 10th, 2023 meeting minutes? To approve. Second. Okay, Mr. Levy got that one, and Mr. Ryan seconded. Are there any changes to the minutes? Are there any objections to approving the minutes? Okay, hearing none, the August 10th, 2023 minutes are approved. Next, we'll move on to our action items. Item 6A is the Destination UMED Toolkit and Study. Let's see, I'm assuming it's probably John. Huh?
Yes, it's a rare TAC meeting where you only have to hear from me on a couple of items. So mark your calendars and enjoy it. This item will be actually John Sessa.
Okay, go for it, John.
On that introduction, thank you. And so John Cecil, with project manager for the Destination UMED study. I hope everyone can hear me. And I hope you don't mind me sitting down and having a little issue with my throat. So I'm gonna have that checked out later. Anyway, what I would like to do first is to just run through a quick PowerPoint. This is a closeout for the Destination UMED study. And we just got the final deliverables from the consultant team here a little while ago. So next. I just want to, for those of you who may not know, Destination UMED The rationale for it was to develop a phased and actionable plan and toolkit for district stakeholders to improve travel to, from, and within UMED. This study, just to re-emphasize, was not have an analysis of any single project or structure improvement. However, there are, and hopefully you'll get a chance to look at the document if you haven't already, the documents, a list of projects, policies, and programs that are recommended for Destination UMED over the current, medium, and long term. Next. So, as you may recall, the Destination UMED study came about as a result of a recommendation in the 2016 UMED district plan. And I won't read all of that, but it recognized that TDM was a potential strategy for UMED. Next. So what is TDM? As the consultants explained to us, for those of us who hadn't really delved into TDM, and as far as we know, this is the first effort along these lines. It's kind of a wonky. Transportation demand management stands for basically catch-all term for strategies that result in more efficient use of transportation resources. And we're looking at giving people more options, reducing single occupancy vehicle trips over time. Next. This map may look familiar, hopefully. This was the study area of the boundaries. It included the major institutions in UMED, including UIA, APU, as well as the residential areas both next to and adjacent to UMED. Here's the timeline. We started in spring 2022, which seems like a long time ago now. And here we are at the tail end of the summer and fall with the final plan and the TDM toolkit. Next. So this is a list of some of the key deliverables. We did a lot of work. All of this information is available on our project webpage, and we've also distributed a lot of this information to the community and the public through various emails, Facebook, all this social media tools that Christine is managing. And so I'll leave it at that. Outreach and engagement, we did a lot of that to try and get public support for this, as well as stakeholder support by identifying, what were the issues, confirming those, providing input, identification of potential strategies, brainstorming, gathering support, responding, prioritizing strategies, and then confirming those. And that was done over an 18-month period. There were also three public meetings we held, and a lot of individual stakeholder interviews as well. Next. So here's the engagement by numbers. There are 4 advisory committee meetings, 3 community workshops, 2 rounds of stakeholder interviews, 3 site visits, and 900 responses to our survey. Next. Just a quick snapshot of the agencies that comprise the advisory committee, and as you can see, there's a number of them, most of which hopefully you will recognize. Next. Goal strategy and implementation. This is really the meat and potatoes of both the final plan and the toolkit. And so some of the goals that we looked at, I guess there's 8 of them, increasing the proportion of UMED trips by not walking, transit, bike, and shared rides, making it safer and more comfortable environment to do all those things, making the travel experience more equitable for all modes and all people, coordinating delivery and communication of transportation services, removing barriers, that says. and provide more travel options, catalyze growth and economic vitality, and promote a variety of land uses. Thank you. Next. So in all, there were 23 strategies. These are all laid out here. I won't go through each and every one of those, but they are all contained within this document. And as you can see, it's a rather large document. It's also very graphic heavy. There's a lot of photographs, but hopefully it gives everyone in the public to more specialized folks information looking for about all of these strategies. Next, please. So as I mentioned, this is the final TDM plan, which is this document. And let's see, next. And this is just a snapshot of what some of those pages look like. I think it's nice to put together. The consultants did a nice job laying it out. I think it's user-friendly, although it is a rather large document. Next. I'm just going to skip through that real quick. Strategy toolkit, I mentioned about that. Basically, it addresses these 4 pots, if you will: physical infrastructure, communications and management, pricing, policy, and programs. Again, this is a quick graphical snapshot of what some of those pages look like. So it's all tied together nicely. There's a number of maps and graphics that complement the text. Next. Again, another page. So what did we learn as a result of this effort, 18-month effort? There's really no magic solution. Change is difficult but necessary, and implementation will take time. Immediate improvements are needed and possible. Implementation requires partnerships and champions, which is critical to the success of this. And this is a living process that we hope will be continued over the next 6 months, 5 years or more. Again, DestinationUMEDstudy.com is where this document lives.
Right now, but it'll be on the public input website or archived on the public input website.
Okay, thank you, Christine.
But you can find on the AMEX, it says Engagement Hub, you can find all our projects. We're kind of moving them over here. These are one of the last phases of projects that started with their own website. They're now on public input so we can retain that information.
Yeah, I should have removed that. Thank you. Next. So that comprises a presentation. Are there any questions about the presentation?
Any questions? Okay.
Must have done a good job.
Yeah.
The only other thing I would like to point out is the highlights are summarized. Well, there's one other thing we need to do, and that's the comment response table. And I know with other AMEX projects and documents, we typically have a comment response table because we put the documents are out for public review. There was a 30-day public review, and we, I believe, received a total of 15, thank you, 15 public comments. However, because some of those public comments were very specific and detailed, we broke them out so that there was a more specific response to each of those comments. And I will say, I don't take any credit for this, but most of the comments were very positive. They liked the plan. They liked what we were doing going through the process. And there was, some others that weren't quite so enthralled with the project. I'll leave it at that. There was 4 items that we responded to, and these were primarily from Mr. Singleton, who again had some very good, specific, detailed comments. And those comments were updated in the plan document. So, are there any questions about the comment response table?
Not on here.
Oh. If there aren't any questions, then we're asking for the Technical Advisory Committee's blessing and to recommend forwarding this to the Policy Committee, which meets
On the 20th.
on the 20th. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Are there any questions or comments from the committee on this agenda item? Do we have, hearing none, do we have any comments from the public? Not seeing anything in the room. It looks like I don't see any online either. What is the will of the committee regarding this item?
I move to recommend approval to the Policy Committee of the Destination UMED Travel Grant Management Study Final Plan and Strategy Toolkit with the suggested changes. Comment response table.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Lyon made the motion and Mr. Levy seconded. We recommending for approval to the Policy Committee, the Destination UMED Travel Demand Management Study Final Plan and Strategy Toolkit with technical changes. And those technical changes are based on what's in the comment response table. Yeah. Are there any objections to approving the motion? Okay, hearing no objections, the motion is approved. Next on our agenda is item 5B, the Complete Streets Policy Update. I'm assuming that's Joni?
This will be Joni Little.
Okay.
All right, thanks everyone. Okay, so 5B, I will just state what the action requested is, what we're requesting, and then just give you a little bit of background. So today we are requesting that you review and recommend to the Policy Committee approval of the suggested changes to the Complete Streets, the AMAPS Complete Streets Policy, which you have in your packet. So, and just to give you some background, a couple weeks ago, DOT hosted a training and brought 2 Federal Highway Administration trainers up to talk about, or to give a training on complete streets. And then one of the first things that happened during the training was the whole group reviewed, and it was a big group of engineers and transportation professionals from all over the city and the state. And one of the first items was to review AMAS's Complete Streets Policy and sort of give it a grade of whether or not they thought it was good or what needed improving. So they did that, and the group reviewed the policy and came up with a bunch of suggested changes to bring the policy more up to date and make it more effective. And it was also attended by Daniel Vaughn, who's on the AMAPS policy committee, who was in favor of making these changes as well. So what we've done is made changes to the policy to reflect what the group's decision was. They include improvements to the policy that address equity, integrating land use and current plans into the policy, prioritizing winter maintenance, incorporating the complete streets checklist, and then also updating a couple of performance measures. And then what we've added in just for your review today as an aside is also to update the goals in section 5, which are basically the goals from the MTP, and we just made them current to reflect the current 2050 MTP. The goals from the existing policy were from the previous, not the previous MTP, but the interim MTP before that. So they're a little bit outdated. So that's what we're asking today. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer any questions.
Okay,
And Brad was also at the training as well.
yeah, it was really good. Had a good cross-section of experts from many different facets.
Make one comment. We had a comment online that the audio is not working clearly, so if everybody speaking could try to speak up and be precise, that would be helpful.
Okay, sounds good. So just to be clear, from what we had in our packet from before versus what copies were given, the one change is that the goals have now been swapped out with the most current
MTP goals
MTP goals
and objectives, yeah.
based on what's in the draft MTP that's undergoing review right now.
Yes, the draft 2050 MTP, not the 2031.
Got it. Okay, are there any questions or comments from the committee? I was at the training and it was very good and something that I think there was widespread support for just continue to improve how we implement complete streets. Are there any questions, or I should say, are there any comments from the public? Okay, go ahead, James.
James Darzik, DOT Planning. I was just curious, when you workshop this at the training, were there any suggestions that you didn't carry over into these changes? And maybe expand on
Oh, that's a good question. I think so. What happened was everybody broke out into groups and then presented on, so there were little groups of folks talking about the policy and what changes were supposed to be suggested. So what they ended up doing was presenting for each group and then writing their agreed group discussion changes on the whiteboard that was there. So those are the ones that I took.
But everything that was
Integrated
on
in
the
the policy.
whiteboard.
Yeah, everything that was on the whiteboard was integrated into the policy. Yeah. So there wasn't anything that I left out that the group as a whole had decided on.
And I guess I would add that what I saw in here isn't like word for word what was suggested. It wasn't workshopped to that degree. It was more ideas that it sounds like Joni has gone back and looked for ways to incorporate into this policy. AMAS is doing additional complete streets updates, is that correct? Kind of the streets typology plan?
So there is a complete streets plan that will be going out probably in the next, or an RFP that will be going out maybe in the next month or so. And that'll be AMAS's first plan. Well, they have been integrating complete streets policy in the TIP criteria, in the MTP, in the non-motorized plan. So it's been being integrated already on several different planning fronts. But this new plan will be a complete streets plan that will include street typologies and looking at the road classifications and are they matching up with the land use. and how can we make the facility safer. So it will be including all of the kind of goals and sections of this complete streets policy in one official planning document. So, and it'll also include a complete streets planning checklist, which FHWA requested that AMATs develop as part of a national trend in evolving complete streets plans.
And so that checklist would be something that all AMATS projects
Oh, I'm sorry,
go through.
checklist, I meant action item, sorry.
Okay,
It's an action item list. It's like an implementation section of the plan to show how we're implementing complete streets. The checklist, yes, that was an element of the complete streets policy originally when we originally brought it through the committees. And that's something that's been developed, but we haven't incorporated it yet as part of the process. So that's something that the group as a whole that met 2 weeks ago felt that that was something that we should start incorporating to as a checklist to check up on projects and see how they're basically checking off the list of, you know, all the elements of complete streets when our projects are being done.
so will that checklist, I remember that it was discussed at the training that it was hard to find.
Yes, so it's on the website, it's on our AMATS website, but it's not in the same exact spot as the policy. So we just would want to incorporate those together so they're in the same spot so people can find them. And then also, when we brought the checklist forward initially, there was some pushback from, I think, the policy committee as to when would be the best spot to incorporate a checklist. Because we have so many projects that AMATS does, it's really hard to do, like FMATS will do their checklist at the beginning because they have only so many projects and they can go out and actually walk their project corridors and do their checklist before they even score and fund a project. They'll be like, is this a complete streets project, yes or no? Great, you know, but we have so many, it's impossible for us to do that. So the question was, where do we incorporate the checklist? So at the group a couple weeks ago, it was suggested to try and incorporate it potentially at the 35% design stage or earlier. And so that's included it's one of the changes in here to incorporate at that stage.
So real quick about the checklist, it's actually not on the website. If you're industrial, like some people, you can sleuth it out because it's on the agenda page for when it was brought forward to the committee. But the policy committee rejected the checklist and said we need to develop one at a later time. So it's not officially been approved. And that is something that, you know, talking with Joni after the training, I was not able to attend unfortunately, but it sounded amazing and I missed it. But that is something that is our next step, is meeting with Municipality of Anchorage, Department of Transportation, and trying to formulate a checklist. We have kind of a draft version, and I think the plan is to maybe have a project that's underway right now, do it as a test case, see how it works, and see where there might need to be areas of improvement, and then bring all that information back to the committees after it's been workshopped and kind of updated for final approval. So we recognize the need to get a checklist ASAP, and we're doing what we can to move forward. So that'll be coming up at a later time.
I have a generic question here. I think I was at the training, and one of the items that came in under exceptions, under most of the areas, kept popping up was allowing maintenance to do their work without having to follow all those, so we can keep roads open and keep things, they can continue to do their job, as long as they were able to show that it was an impedance to the cost and the operation of the facility. I don't see that in any of the exceptions here. Or as number 2, your cost of accommodation is excessively disproportionate to the need or probable use. Is that verbiage supposed to cover that?
Okay, so you would like to add those?
There are a number, and in all the examples we went through, there are a number of maintenance items that allowed maintenance to have exceptions to following this for all of their tests. And I'm thinking just like on Bernard Road where we have to go in and remove some 100 feet of asphalt and repave it or something just to keep the road functional for a few more years until we can come back in and rebuild the roadway appropriately. fully, it just allows them to keep things operational, that's all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so I was incorporating the general guidelines from the whiteboard from after, and I don't have the exact, list of everything that everyone brought forward, but what was written up on the board is what I tried to incorporate. So if there's other things that I missed that you want
I'm
to
taking out the
incorporate.
documentation from the handout that we have that are important too.
Okay, yeah.
So one question that I have about kind of timing for these changes, when the plan that is going through the RFP, or about to go through the RFP process, when that gets underway, are these policies going to be reconsidered? Is this approach now looking at this? Is this like setting the stage for that plan? Like, how does that timing work?
Current RFP does not have reviewing the complete streets policy as in the scope of work. So, but it does specifically state to incorporate the policy, the AMAT's existing complete streets policy into the plan and its development. So, but no, not reviewing this policy and amending it. That's not part of the scope of work of the complete streets plan as it currently exists.
Okay, so what we're doing now is setting the stage then for that. So these changes,
Yeah.
it's
So
not like if we think of some of these things, we can wait till that point. We should try to incorporate them now.
I think that's true, and I feel like a lot of the things that were brought up, especially equity and incorporating land use, are really important factors that should be incorporated into the complete streets plan. And I do feel like the goals and objectives from the current MTP draft, the 2050 draft, are all much more specific in addressing complete streets and providing safer facilities for all modes. And so I feel like that element in itself is really helpful and will help direct the complete streets plan. So, but yeah, I suppose this would be setting the stage for that plan and making sure we're including everything that's currently
I know that one of the things that I recall from that training was the discussion about using words such as consider, which make it really squishy and easy to justify not doing something, versus having language that's a little more direct.
right.
But at the same time, thinking about a policy that, and the purpose of that is to have a policy that then does result in action being taken and things being done differently. And so as I think about kind of that question of how do we do things differently, with some of these changes, are we comfortable that making these changes will result in us doing things differently at the DOT and the MOA and AMATs on our projects? And so are you addressing that question?
I think that's a really good point. I think that one of the main things that we've always talked about with complete streets is we are a planning agency. We can set policy, we can make recommendations. When it comes down to actual on-the-ground street design, that's really dependent on the engineers who are experts in design. And so, and I know for the city, the PM&E, their design criteria manual is sort of the rule book as far as what gets designed and what's okay to approve. And so part of the complete streets plan will look at making it easier for like PM&E to embrace complete streets sort of design policies and criteria and everything in their actual design, so that we can, not just create policy, but actually help on the ground implementation happen. So we're hoping for that, but we're a planning agency and we can make policy and we can make recommendations, but it's not ultimately our, I mean, they're signing off their professional license on designs that are going to protect people. So, but we're hopeful that this will help move the needle on that, so. And we have, in the Complete Streets Plan, we have several departments providing match, and Amy is going to be helping us with our match, and so is the freight community. So, yeah, we're going to be including all the stakeholders, all the players to help things actually happen. That answers the question.
Yeah, that gives a little bit more context, I think. That's some things to think about. Any other questions or comments from the committee?
I got a quick clarification. So section 5, the last bullet point, when it says if project's compliance with the policy should be determined roughly about the checklist at 35%. Who reviews the checklist?
So that would be ultimately the policy committee that would be able to review the I mean, the TAC would also get to review the checklist. And then, but it would be the policies committee's decision whether or not the project is adhering to the Complete Streets policy, and if it needs, if it could be approved or if it needs to be adjusted.
Thank you.
Kind of on that line, do projects at 35% come to the technical committee and policy committee for review?
Well, typically we are presenting on, I mean, I think consultants do come and present on projects at the 35% design stage. I'm fairly certain that's usual. No?
It's not, no, it's not
Oh,
guaranteed.
okay.
Typically, I think we work closely with the Department of Transportation to have projects come and present as often as possible to the Technical Advisory Committee and Policy Committee. You know, what this would do is kind of set a little more of a precedent of every project having to fill this out and provide that and go through the TAC and PC. So I think there'll be a little more involvement than maybe it has been in the past.
Right, and so filling it out would be something that we, based on this policy, it looks to me that the project team would fill out as they're going through that 35% design. And it doesn't necessarily, in my mind, mean that we have to review it or micromanage that process. We just would expect that when they come to us, they would have already done this if it's past 35%, or if it's leading up to 35%, that they'd at least talk to this. Is that?
I think the expectation is every project will have to fill out this checklist, and this checklist will go through the TAC to the policy committee for the policy committee to review. And if the project is following the Complete Streets policy based on whatever metrics we send out in that checklist, then we're good to go. If it's not, and there are reasons why not, and the policy committee is okay with it, then it's good to go. If it's not, and there's not good reasons, and there's concerns, then that's an opportunity for discussion to happen with the policy committee about what's going on and if there are any changes that can be made.
One more, yeah. Got it.
I was going to defer to Basky. Hand up there.
Okay, staff comment, go ahead.
Sure, public comment. Highway design, head of highway design for DOT, Sean Baskey. So this is exactly why we need to workshop how to actually implement this between the municipalities' context-sensitive solutions, guidance, right? You know, where does this fit in that mixture? There's no real clean way of doing it, and potentially, you know, we want all these projects to go forward to construction as quickly as possible, but with the correct improvements. And so potentially if we go and submit a checklist at the same time that we're doing, you know, submittals to the Planning and Zoning Commission takes 4 to 6 months for you to get through their process. And so how does it fit in? Theoretically, this is all pre-NEPA, right? So you haven't signed your NEPA document solidifying what your project is. We're already sitting around 2 years. You start adding in 6-month timelines, plus another 2 or 3 month timeline, plus another 3-month timeline, you know, going to each of the communities and getting, and eventually, we want to make an informed decision about how to recommend, you know, everything's incorporated and goes back through MAMAS, right? ultimately whoever the ownership of the roadway, they'll have a lot of, so whether it's the municipality or the state, they'll have a lot of influence that could be expected on, some of the end results of it, given that they're gonna have to maintain it unless other agreements are made. So that way, we can find a path forward on some of the things. But I think as evidenced by Spinard Road and some of the other complete streets projects coming up, I think we're headed in the right direction. It's just, I think we would see Spinard Road result as largely a success in the complete streets mentality, right?
Yes.
Generally.
Yes.
Otherwise, we gotta go back to the drawing board real fast because we're about to go start buying, right? But, so, I think the end result is that we need to formalize the thing to make sure that we're headed in that same direction on all these other projects. But, we've got local buy-in, the municipality on the path forward for Spinard Road, some of the other projects too.
Yeah, good feedback. And I guess just to be clear on my thoughts, I want to do things that are going to change and improve our process. And so policy updates are an important step of that. I think the plan is an important step of that. Having the sort of workshop where we can sit down with those that are implementing and find out what some of the pain points are and like how to incorporate those from that implementation standpoint is important. Is that going to come as part of the plan? Because those are all the things flowing through my mind. So I don't want this to be like our one chance to take a crack at the policies and then just forward this on to the policy committee without knowing what those of us here that are going to have to implement this or help implement it in our own way know what the implications of that are. If that makes sense. So I'm a little bit hesitant to personally recommend forwarding this quite yet without knowing some of those answers. As much as I want to support the complete streets, I don't want a policy that we don't know how to implement or what's needed and it doesn't quite match,
Yeah, no, totally. Well, I think we were there was a lot of momentum at that training and we realized then to update the policy. And so this is, us just carrying forward that momentum and doing the update. So, but it sounds like maybe, a work session or something of that nature. The committee wants to workshop the policy more and figure out how everything's going to work. And that's certainly up to the committee. But yeah, like I said, this is just a amalgamation of what happened at the training. We're trying to keep the momentum forward. We had support from one of the AMAS policy members to bring it forward and to integrate it into the policy. So, but yeah, it makes sense to have it make sense to everyone before it's official policy.
So go ahead, Aaron.
I think the general changes to the policy outside of when the complete streets checklist is needed now, because we have the RFP going for the project, and we really want to make sure that that is following the updated version of the policy, not spend a few months doing this or 4 or 5 months, however long it takes, and then eventually get that project recaught back up. So, maybe the section about the checklist can be removed about when we do the checklist, because there has been discussion, do we do it at the planning stage when we put it at the tip? When should we do it? Do we do it more than once? And I think that's kind of part that needs to be worked on at this point, because we don't really know all that. But I think a lot of the other stuff is kind of basic, just catching us up to where we're at with our goals and objectives for the 2050 NTP.
So if I'm hearing you right, on that bullet, if we remove the at 35% design stage language there, and just reference the complete streets checklist form, we have the workshop, we develop the checklist. I imagine that will establish when and how that gets, when it's submitted, when it's reviewed, that sort of thing, that bullet would still be valid and kind of keeps some of these other changes moving forward.
Yeah, because, the policy can be updated whenever. There's no timeline of how many times we can update or what, if we figure out in the next 2 weeks, hey, we wanted something else, okay, cool, we can make that adjustment at the policy committee or whatever. So, it's okay, we can bring it back whenever, but it would just be nice to have a lot of the other things in place for when we get the street, the design, the actual plan started.
And when we get done with the checklist, I imagine that would go through TAC and policy for approval as well. So if there were any edits at that time, we could have them together as one.
We probably will want to at that point, because we'll have a better idea of when we want to implement the checklist. And we'll be like, okay, we'll bring both the policy and the checklist at the same time, get approval of the checklist, get approval of the policy, whatever order we need to, and then it's all good to go and ready. I think not having the checklist right now is fine regarding the Complete Streets plan, because, we can deal with that as we go along.
So question, does that also allow us to incorporate the changes that Russ mentioned, or do we need to hold the item back until those items can be incorporated?
So I think a lot of the changes, or that what Ross was talking about, is already covered, as he mentioned, under number 2 for the exception, where it talks about that cost of accommodation is excessively disproportionate. If we're doing a pavement project, we're not going to be having a Complete Streets policy adhering to that particular one, because pavement projects are so specific of what they can and can't do. AMAT's policy actually dictates what pavement projects can and can't do, as we're finding out where people are asking for lighting and other stuff added to pavement. We really can't do that kind of stuff. So I'm not really too worried about that, because I think the exceptions are already there. But it would be nice to have those discussions, and if we feel that it needs to be more clearly laid out in the policy later, as we're going through the checklist, I don't see any reason why we couldn't come back and spell that out and, fine tune the language.
My concern of approving anything for me today is that this is the first time I've seen this. And while I was in the training, I still like to have time to decipher that and kind of compare some of my notes from the training to what's on here, and compare some of, and have some just kind of discussions with other project groups that I work on. And so I wouldn't be recommending approval for anything on something like this today. This has a far-reaching implications and potentially high costs on projects. It commits projects to spending a tremendous amount of money. Another thing that was in that training that this just does not, that I don't see addressed, is that it talked about phasing the Complete Streets improvements, which is palatable to community members as you move forward, and having gone through a number of phases with a bunch of different projects where we started out by adding a lane, and over the years we had a sidewalk, and then the community who was up in arms about the sidewalk, and after 5 years, and all of a sudden they come back and say, hey, maybe you can add a bike trail, and then we do that, and then maybe we add something else to it. And there's some benefits to training, and in that training that was discussed, that was specifically discussed on how the benefits of and allowing time with each of those elements to be absorbed by the community. And the example I use in town here is Patterson. When we did Patterson originally from between Tudor and Northern Lights, the first phase just had a sidewalk on one side, and then the first phase was just essentially strip paved, and then we went back and put curb and gutters, and then we put sidewalks and a bike trail, and then we put one section that has 2 bike trails on it, and the community loves it, but the first phase is not. And so it's just one of those things that makes it more palatable for us. Makes our job, I won't say easier, but makes people understand what we're trying to do. That's all.
Well, no, and this was, my notes from the training, so it sounds like there's some more details there that could be incorporated. But that's why we got it in front of you, so.
I will say, this policy is already in place, so projects already have to adhere to it.
Municipal
So-
projects do not.
AMATs, this is only for
I know
AMATs.
AMATs, but in here, in this policy, it says, you do say you're gonna try to support, you
Yes.
know, the local areas to be following these same policies. And well, let me be clear on this. I'm a fan of most everything that was done with those classes. I like them, I use them almost every day, but I also have to, like the rest of you guys, I also have to, have heated discussions, oftentimes heated discussions with members of the public about why are we spending money on this when we need this? We need storm drains, or we need, more money for our schools or whatever. You know, everyone has a difference of opinion, so, and that's just my 2 cents on it.
Did you have something, Craig?
No, I was just gonna say the same thing there. I was gonna say that this is an AMATs policy. It is in place right now. And so, you know, if the city or the state wants to have their own complete streets policy related to the projects that they fund, that's on them. But this applies to AMATs policy or AMATs projects and its funded projects. Like everyone else that look at it and see it as a model to run with, but AMATs can only speak for what AMATs can fund.
Yeah, and so I think it's really commendable, Johnny, that you took from that training and you're starting to look for ways to implement it so quickly. I think that is really valuable. With regards to the upcoming plan, doing these policy changes, is there anything in here that's like essential that really we want to need to have in place before that plan goes out so that it will set the stage in a different way?
I think there are a lot of really important points in these changes that will be crucial to that plan. Like kind of as I was talking about earlier, the equity piece is really important. The integrating the land use and current plans with streets is also really important. Prioritizing winter maintenance is huge. We talked about that a ton at the training. The checklist, we can leave, that checklist bullet was actually the same. The only thing I added to that was, the text you can see in red. So the checklist was already in the existing policy. So that would, if that, want to take that out until that's figured out or at a more appropriate time. And then the 2 items that were added to the performance measures, I think are also important. They just restate the importance of land use. And then we're moving towards, in the safety plan, we're moving towards a performance measure, like a feeling of safety on a facility as a performance measure. Instead of just looking at crashes, we want to know how people are feeling on a facility. So I feel like that's going to be really relevant. That's relevant to the safety plan, and that's going to be really relevant moving forward. So I think those are all really kind of crucial to have in the policy currently. And then as well as updating all of the goals and objectives from the 2050 MTP. I mean, those have all been recently workshopped and worked on by the community. Those are all relevant. They should be updated. The goals that were in there before were actually not even from the most current MTP, they were from the interim MTP. So I think it is super important to update the goals and objectives to reflect the current MTP. So I think everything in here is very important and should be included in the policy before the Complete Streets Plan starts. I recognize that this committee want to look at more details about the checklist and how it applies to your specific work, but Craig and Aaron are correct. This is an AMATs policy. It's already been in place. We're not making any huge changes that are going to affect city-specific and state-specific projects unless they're already an AMATs project. So, yeah, that's my
That's
sense.
helpful.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, any comments from the public? Is anybody in the room, anybody online? Okay, so what is the will of the committee?
I don't have a problem moving it forward now, but I understand that the two of you at least are interested in getting some more time on it.
You know, from Joni's explanation, I'm okay moving this forward. I think we take out that 35% because that is implementation detail. I think doing workshop, I mean, if there are things that we can do, DOT, MOA, AMAS, whoever, to make the Complete Streets Plan the most successful, doing some sort of workshop where we talk about the CSS process or what the Complete Streets, how we're doing things. I think that plan is maybe the time to dive into some of the details and make some changes. Addressing some of the things that Russ brings up, I think those are going to be essential and key and really important. So seeing the implementation side, I feel like that plan is going to, for me, address a lot of those and needs to. And then if we need to update the policy following that plan, we can do that. But I think you've raised some good points for me where I can support moving this forward because it gets us closer to where we need to be when we kick off that plan. So that's my thought. So,
Any thoughts on that, Russ? You still want to?
I'm still hesitant because, again, if you, and granted, these are all encourages implementation. Encourages implementation, but then changes to our codes to follow the same requirements and all, and not to our code, but to our complete, our context sensitive solutions policy, our design criteria manuals, and our pre-construction manuals, to follow these.
So if in 2 weeks it goes before the policy committee, can you have with your staff look through the things and provide them to Kent, who's on the policy committee, so we can integrate them as appropriate?
Integrate what? Integrate what in there? Go through the design criteria manual and the pre-construction manual? Oh, no, I can't do that. Those are around 2 weeks.
I'm in a policy statement.
To modify these statements, or you mean?
Yeah, if there's any modifications to this policy that addresses concerns there. Because it's not like
Knowing that this applies to AMAT's funded projects.
Right.
Doesn't apply.
Well, this applies to AMAT's processes, but it's also saying that it's encouraging the community to modify our policies and our documents. That's the way I read it. That it encourages us to modify our approach for projects to follow the same too. And we aren't going to have the funding to do that. We're going to. We look at AMAS projects when we have projects that we know we can come back and do rebuild. We've got a number of them we'd love to do in-house, but AMAS is your AMAS, they're not the AMAS project.
Yeah, I guess I read encourages as just that.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't require you to do anything.
It doesn't.
So,
It's just.
It's not going to have any.
And I said that. I said it.
Yeah,
It's encouraged.
Not going to have any teeth that force you to do anything. It's not going to have any teeth to force DOT to do anything with their either state or NHS funded projects.
Yeah, that's my opinion.
And I'll just say too, sorry if I may, and the original intent when we made this policy many years ago was to create one for AMAS and then hope that the city would create its own and that DOT would create their own. This would just be an example of ours.
My
So-
understanding of this right here though is this is already approved, right? That I just pointed out.
This is an
So this
AMAS,
is,
an existing
we're just
AMAS.
talking about what's in the red or in the orange at this point. So my comment on it was I disagree with this. That's already been approved. It isn't either here nor there. We've got
Right.
our comments don't really have any say or
No, but-
any sway at all.
I think it's important.
Especially with the 35% that you wanted there.
in the sense that was also was saying earlier, as planning agency, we can only make recommendations. It's really up to the city and the design criteria manual and the engineers to implement what they think is best. And so this is just a recommendation, and then our hope was that the city would develop its own policy, the state would develop its own policy that can really get down in the details to, what would work best for the city.
Yeah, our policy would be developed through public groups and public participation. And then come up with wording and all that would be palatable to all, so everyone would have a chance to comment on it.
Yeah.
So, and I can't speak for the general public here. But the 35% taking that off would answer my question from earlier, absolutely. To answer your question.
Okay, somebody wanna propose a motion?
Don't make me the bad guy. I guess I would recommend this policy to the policy committee for approval, with the exception of, I believe it's the last bullet, section 5, with the taking out the words at the 35% design stage. Recommend that to the policy committee for approval.
I second that.
Okay, moved by Mr. Lyon, seconded by Mr. Lee. To recommend for approval to the policy committee, the changes that are in the streets policy, with the exception of that removal of the at 35% design stage. Are there any objections to approving the motion? Okay, hearing none, the motion is approved. Thank you for that discussion. That's a good one. I'm excited to see how the plan comes about and to participate in that. The next item on our agenda is moving into the project and plan updates. Item 6A, 2023 certification report. I'm assuming this one is you, Aaron, right?
Yes, it is. I'll try and quickly go through this since we are running out of time. So as you all know, we had certification review by FHWA this year. Every 4 years, the FHWA and FTA come in and do an overview of how AMATS is meeting all of our federal requirements for the transportation planning process. So this year, we got ourselves a hefty number of corrective actions and recommendations. There are 6 corrective actions and 14 recommendations. I believe that is probably the most ever for AMATS, so I guess I'll pat myself on the back. Did a good job there.
Don't blame me.
So I'm not going to go through the recommendations. You're more than happy to go through if you want on your own. There are a list of them. I did just want to go through the corrective actions because they are the immediate, we must take care of these right away. And so I want to give you an idea of what AMATS staff is going to be working on with FHWA and FTA and the state. So, ask me questions there. First corrective action, number 1 is TIP must include a description of the effects of projects towards achieving the federal performance targets. I won't read the rest of it, but basically what we currently have in our TIP narrative doesn't meet what FHW and FTA are looking at in terms of showing how our projects in the TIP are helping with meeting the performance measures that we've adopted. It was our best try and it didn't meet their needs. So part of what we're going to be doing with FHW and FTA is sitting down and developing a plan of action and working very closely with them on what we can do to help address this corrective action. So you'll probably see something in the future where we'll have a TIP narrative update coming before you that has a lot more information on how projects are meeting or helping us meet those performance measures. Some areas do, each project gets its own page that outlines every single performance measure and what it does. It's a lot. Some areas spend a lot, but they kind of have the staff time and resources to do that. So what we have to balance is how much staff time and resource we have to be able to do that. Because this is for every project in the TIP, not just AMATS projects. So state projects, transit projects, everything. So,
So they haven't yet specified that they are gonna want that level of detail,
that's kind of what we have to work on with them.
so they may want that, you just need to talk with them.
We have to talk with them and find out what is it they're looking for. So this is just kind of notifying us, we need to work on this. It's not meeting the federal requirements. So what that is part of our plan of action. Next is number 2. This one is about public participation plan update. So it's one piece of the PPP update, and it's talking about where the public can go to access public comments as part of our final MTP and TIP documents. You know, we post these comments and the dispositions on our website. It doesn't say that in the PPP. So people, you know, the public doesn't really know where to go to find this information. And so part of what will be done is the public participation plan update that Christine is working on is laying a lot of that information out about where is it going to be available, same location, same place that people can go to on a regular basis. So you'll be seeing this update coming through
And,
soon.
and so the fact that we've been doing a lot of creative things of having all the comments on the same website, probably is making that simple, right?
Yes, it is helping us with that. And I think that's part of what we need to kind of describe is what's happening with that and where people can find that all. And since it'll all be on a website, public input, we'll have to spell it out for everybody and figure out what we're going to do. So this one, I don't see, you know, very difficult to be able to address. It just take a little bit of time with the PPP update. Number 3 is the MTP must document the consideration of the results of the CMP, including identifying any projects, including SOV projects that result from the CMP. So for the 2050 MTP, we will have to address this corrective action before the 2050 MTP is approved.
Maybe
So-
just tell those that don't know what the CMP is.
Oh, sorry.
More acronyms in the same sentence.
Oh, don't worry. I
Thanks.
can
Thanks
keep going.
anyway.
CMP is the congestion management process. So as a TMA, Transportation Management Area, we are an MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization of 200,000 or greater. So we get bumped up to this next level of requirements. So we have more requirements than say, what, FAST, Fairbanks area. I don't know the FAST. The Fairbanks MPO. Jackson will be mad at me if he hears that. Don't tell him. You know, they don't have as many requirements, and the CMP, the congestion management process, is one of them, where we basically have to take a look at our system, identify where and kind of what kind of congestion we have, and then bring forward solutions, projects, strategies on how to address that congestion. And so part of what FHWA is saying with number 3 is that we need to do a better job in the MTP of documenting how that CMP process and how the projects from the CMP are being integrated into the MTP. So Chelsea Ward-Waller, the project manager for the 2050 MTP, has been working on that, you know, identifying which projects have come from the CMP. We put a little bit of text in there, but we may need some more work on that. So that will be part of our plan of action with FHWA and FTA on, does our 2050 meet that, or do we need to do more work and get that integrated in before that plan is final approved? So I don't see this one as being difficult to address either. It's just more narrative information that we need to show, tell our story. The next one is the CMP again. So this one is talking about, you know, the effectiveness of implementing our CMP strategies. You know, part of this is our CMP is getting older, it's a little more outdated, and we need to do a quick update on our CMP. Well, that's not going to be done in time for the 2050 MTP because that can take a couple of years and we don't have much longer left for the 2050. So we're going to have to work with FHWA on this one, but I think the plan moving forward is talk about how we're using the CMP as part of the 2050 MTP and what we did to update our congestion information. Because typically what we do is we take the CMP, put it all through the model, and the model kind of gives us an idea of what our congestion is. It's our way of helping to update it in between the major updates of the CMP. And then, you know, we select projects in part by using that model and where the congestion is at. Again, our model is regional model, so it is not fine-grained on every applicable thing. I don't see this one as being an issue either, but you will be seeing something come through for a tip where we'll be adding in a CMP update because we have to get started on that ASAP.
When does that do?
Well, technically speaking, there's no due date for the CMP updates. It's just FHW and FTA look at it and say, okay, 2016 was the last time you did the CMP update. It's, getting a little older here. By the time you get your next one update, that one will be almost 10 years old, and that tends to be, a threshold. So we as AMATs are probably gonna have to start setting an update cycle for a lot of our plans, especially the required ones, if they don't already have a required update cycle in federal regulations like the TIP and NTP. So, next one, number 5. So this one's not too difficult. This is basically saying our financial plan has to include the match in the TIP. So right now, all projects that are in the TIP show federal plus match in one number. And what FHW and FTA would like us to show is breaking that out. So we show the federal funding and then the match portion on there, so that they can see we're accounting for the match and also identifying where that match is coming from. Is it state or local match? Because, match has become kind of an issue on some projects. So I think we need to do a little more on our TIP to show that. We've kind of already talked to FHW about it. We think we have a plan forward, so we'll probably be seeing that amendment. I don't know. We'll see when we get it done, but we got to do it soon. And then the last one, this one's a little more just understandable. The TIP can't include projects which funds are not currently available, including those projects with 0 funds. So as part of the 23 through 26 TIP, we thought it would be really good to show projects that are currently underway, but don't have funds programmed in our 23 through 26 time period. This gives the public an idea of, okay, we have these projects underway and then we're moving into the new one. It's kind of giving a holistic picture of everything that AMATS is working on. FHWA does not want us to show projects in the TIP that have no funding in this case, FY 23 through 26 timeframe. So, don't worry, I'll be reaching out. So I'll be reaching out to both DOT. I've already been reaching out to other folks about projects that are in the TIP that have no funding in the 23 through 26 time period. Amendment number 2, which will be coming forward in either October or November, will be removing any of those projects that don't have funding. So I'll be reaching out to talk to the folks, transit and stuff, about what they would like us to do.
I mean, can we have a placeholder of like $100?
I mean, technically speaking, it needs to be kind of a realistic number, so as to not game the system.
I'm just thinking, we have projects where it's like, there's funding, there's no funding, and then
That's
funding
fine.
continues.
Well,
They're okay with that?
As long as it shows some kind of funding in the fiscal years of the TIP, so 23 through 26, it's fine. If there's
Skip a
like
year.
2 years of funding, then 0 year, so 23, 24 have funding, 25 and 26 have no funding, you're fine. There's some funding in there. But there are some projects that have no funding because they were underway or other reasons.
They were
So
funded from prior years?
Yeah.
typically funded from prior years. There is one in your guys' area that we'll have to talk about that's been carried over from year to year. So, so I don't see this as too difficult, but we just need to work with everybody on what this means and get it updated.
It sounds like your definition of funding can include anticipated funding, like we program it in for bond funds in 24 or 25.
Mhm.
That's right, okay.
Yeah, if there's anticipated funding coming online, then we can usually show it, but it has to be part of like our fiscal constraint. So if it's AMATS funding, we would have to show that in there. If like the state is gonna put,
It's like a match where we pull it off of
Yeah,
bonds.
yeah, all that we find. So, just, it seems easy, but as we move forward, there may be some things we have to kind of adjust and work on. So, I will say that a lot of these corrective actions just show that FHW and FTA are taking a much more focused look on AMATS and our process and our programs to make sure that we are 100% in compliant with federal requirements. So you'll see a lot of changes coming forward.
So this last number 6 does talk about illustrative projects can be added or can be shown, but need to be clearly identified. So would the current projects that don't need future funding, can those be shown so that the public sees them and knows they're there? It's just not to be part of the TIP? Is that what your thought was?
So we can change them to illustrative, but if it's an active ongoing project, we can't show it as illustrative because then that's a weird, that is kind of, I think, it defeats the purpose. But if it's like a future project we want to work on, for example, the tip does show an illustrative project for Fifth Avenue signals and lighting. Does the policy committee say, we want this in here because this is the next project up if funding comes available? So if there are projects like that, we can, but most of the projects that are shown in there are ones that are underway, so we would not be able to show them as illustrative, is my take, but.
Is a tip narrative a place where you can list those?
That might be a better idea to talk about in the narrative in the appendix. Here's a list of projects that are, underway and that, AMATS has previously funded. But if we ever need to add funding to it, it still has to be added into the tip tables through an amendment. And I think part of what we're getting at with this one is it's confusing to the public. It's confusing to FHWA. What are these projects exactly? Because you show no funding. Are you going to put future funding in there? Are you trying to go around the amendment process by doing that? Like, there's too many questions, so we need to clear things up.
Got it.
Okay, and then there's a bunch of recommendations. One big one, I said I wasn't going to go into, but just a heads up, operating agreement. The AMATS intergovernmental operating agreement, we do need to make some pretty significant updates to it, so that's something that we'll be working on probably within the next year, and you'll see that come before you. So it's a lot of cleanup because we have kind of a lot of extra stuff in there that doesn't need to be in there, and we can move that out into policies and procedures. So, I wanted to bring this forward just to show that AMAT staff will have a lot of work to be doing here within the next year or so. So there may have to be some shifting in priorities to make sure that we address at least all the corrective actions on time. So we'll keep you guys updated. And FHW and FTA will be attending the policy committee meeting on September 28th to talk about this item. There's no action for approval. This document is done and approved by FHWA. They're just giving us the heads up about it. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the committee? Any comments from the public? Okay. Moving on to our next item, item 6B, safety plan update.
Okay.
John Will.
A lot of room today. Okay, so our safety plan, the AMAT safety plan is our first safety plan. We will be hosting an open house in October and a couple events. So there's a flyer you should have in your packet. There's some copies over there. So basically on October 3rd, our project team's gonna be up here. We're gonna kick off everything with a happy hour. We're actually trying something new and try to have more of a little social event. So we have reserved King Street Brewing, the 3rd floor, and we'll be providing the space and some pizza and other appetizers. And if you would like to purchase your own beverage, you can do that. But so that's going to be October 3rd from 4:30 to 6:30. So come on by and meet the project team and learn a little bit more about the plan, goals and objectives. So we're excited to do that. And then the second day is Wednesday, October 4th. We're going to host an open house from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. and that'll be at the Fairview Recreation Center. And so again, our project team will be there to answer questions. We're also going to have several groups tabling at the event. So that'll be nice to share all these other agencies and groups who are working to improve safety in the area. And they'll have information there as well. We'll be hosting 2 walking tours. The first one starts at 1 p.m. and it'll be exploring the Gamble-Ingra couplet. And then the second walking tour will be exploring the traffic calming elements that have been installed in Fairview already. And so those are going to be 2 walking tours. This flyer has the website on it. It also has a QR code. So if you want to get access to the website, that will take you there. And then you've got project team contact. So anyways, it's going to be a fun event. We hope you guys can make it, or everyone can make it. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. And I will be happy to answer anything. So.
Okay, thanks, Jody. Any questions or comments? Any comments from the public? Okay, we'll move on to item 6C, the STIP and MTP update. that yours, Aaron?
Yes, it is. Thank you. So some of you may know, AMAT's recently submitted comments on the STIP, the new STIP, the 24 through 27, including the fact that there are a number of projects in the STIP that are not in the AMAT's 2040 MTP. And so to correct this, it was originally thought that we were going to have to do an amendment to the 2040 MTP, which would take about 6 to 8 months. However, very astutely pointed out by the MTP project manager, we're already in the process of getting a 2050 MTP approved, updated, developed and approved. So we decided that there was going to be a quick shift in how we approach this. Instead of doing a 2040 amendment and spending all that time and substantial amount of staff time, modeling, all that kind of stuff, we were just going to do our very best to get the 2050 MTP approved on time. Because almost all of the projects in the STIP are in the 2050 MTP. They've already been included in the financial analysis, the model, they're gonna be part of the air quality conformity for that. So it didn't really make sense to also be doing an MTP amendment to the 2040 if we were gonna be doing that with the 2050. So the plan right now is to get the 2050 MTP approved, early 2024. Get that to FHWA and FTA in time so they can approve the 2050 MTP, which means then all the projects in the STIP that are within our area are in the approved MTP and the STIP can be approved. Just to be honest with everyone, this is going to require a lot of work from the committees and staff. So that's why I kind of wanted to bring this up. It's going to be all hands on deck to get this done. Because we originally had until August of 2024 to get the MTP approved. So we're shortening that by a few months to get this done on time. So we want to give you a quick heads up. October 30th from 10 to 12, we will be doing a work session with the TAC and PC to review comments and kind of get general direction from the committees on what they would like to do with those comments. If the general direction is the committees would like those comments to come forward for discussion and approval, we'll bring that forward in November. So this 2-hour-long meeting, there's probably going to be a lot of comments. So we're going to provide them to you at least a week in advance, sooner if possible, but we'll see how it goes. And we'll need you guys to take time and review them and come prepared to that work session to have a discussion on them. I do understand it's a lot to ask. I always like getting more than a week to review comments, so we will do what we can. Yeah, so I'm here to help answer any questions if you have any. Thank you.
Okay, so October 30th?
October 30th.
And you'll send...
We'll send an invite and, we'll send the notice to the public a week in advance because it does have to be noticed to the public. And then any information we get in terms of the comments and responses, we'll try and get them out to you guys as soon as we can.
Okay, any questions or comments from the committee?
Yeah, I have one.
Okay, go for it, Steve.
Yeah. So I'm going to be out of town on October the 30th. Is there going to be an ability to Teams into that one?
Yes, we will have it as a hybrid meeting so the public can join via virtual or not. We do encourage if the committee members are able to show up in person, but if you are not able to make it in person, there will be a virtual option.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Anyone from the public? It looks like we have one. So Chelsea has a question. Go for it, Chelsea.
Yeah, I was just going to add to Aaron's comment there that calendar invite will go out as soon as we announce this at the policy committee. So if you can put a hold on your calendar for October 30th from 10 to noon, that would be great. And then we'll share this with the policy committee at their next meeting, and then we'll get that invite out after that. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Chelsea. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, so it looks like we're moving on to item 7, general information. Go for it, Aaron.
I guess I am speaking a lot at this meeting, I apologize. Just 2 quick things for you guys. First, we have to do an emergency admin mod to the TIP. There were a couple of errors that we need to correct that are admin mod level. Staff, myself, has been working with DOT and FHWA on this, and FHWA has been very supportive of us moving forward with projects, even though there are a couple of errors. They relate to the fund code and need ID shown in the tip. When the CERSA money was removed, we didn't update one of the plans. That's the climate action plan that's moving forward to not show the CERSA funding anymore and show it all STVG. Sorry for the acronyms, but STVG is Surface Transportation Block Grant. It's our primary funding source. And to update the need ID to be the appropriate one as shown in the STIP. And so we have to do this admin mod ASAP. There was not enough time to post it on the TAC agenda because we had already posted the agenda when I got the information and was able to work with FHWA. So we will be bringing it to the policy committee meeting September 28th. I encourage you all to listen in or attend if you want to know more about it. It's a pretty simple number of changes, just kind of making these corrections, nothing too earth shattering. So I just want to let you all know.
Okay.
And then the second item is unfortunately a bittersweet, happy, sad. We have recently learned that Joni Wilm will be leaving AMATS. She has accepted an offer with other organizations. She's still here in town, thankfully, so you'll be able to see her around town. But Joni Wilm's last day with us will be October 6th. So I just want to thank Joni very much for her 14 years of working with AMATS. I think you have done a lot of work to help shape AMATS into what it is today with your tireless work with the active transportation community, especially about complete streets, non-motorized, the safety, everything, working very hard on that. It's not gone unnoticed. So thank you for everything, Joni, and we wish you the best in your new adventure.
Thank you, Aaron. Well, it's been fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's not so good news.
Figure
But
it
yeah,
out.
we're excited for you. I can say I'm excited. Yeah, change can be exciting, so that's great. Okay, moving on then to committee comments. Any comments from the committee, things to share?
I have one.
Go ahead.
The Public Transportation Department is currently working on its PTAS plan, the Public Transit Agency Safety Plan. And we will be bringing that to this committee, the policy committee, and then it'll be sent on to the assembly for their approval. And hopefully we'll be on time this year, so we will be in compliance. So that's coming probably to our October meetings.
Is that the one where you guys are going to have targets and measure, or the targets and stuff that we'll have to adopt and everything? Okay, we'll then look out for that. Thank you.
Okay, other committee member comments? Go ahead, Luke.
On the DOT staffing side, I wanted to mention the Deputy Commissioner John Bender has provided notice. At the end of the month, he's going to be leaving. He's heavily been involved on the aviation side of the house with DOT, but since Wolfgang's retirement, he's been acting director for Central Region. Been great to work with over the years. He's heading over to Northern Ontario. He's going to be flying 767s here moving forward. So assume he'll be working, or he'll be still participating in the policy meeting here later this month, but wish him the best as he gets off into new adventures.
Yeah, flying off into the horizon, huh?
Yeah. No news on a backfill for either the regional director or his deputy commissioner position, but if anything comes up, we'll let you know.
Yeah, those are some big positions to fill. Okay, thank you, Luke. Any other? Go ahead, Craig.
I just want to thank Joni.
Craig. It's emotional. Thank you, Craig. Craig has been amazing to work for and worked for him for many years in AMATS, and I'm gonna miss all you guys. Don't make me cry. I'm gonna do it.
If anybody made you cry, it's Craig.
I'll make all of you. All those good years. Really fun.
I think that the timing of the safety plan kickoff at King Street might be a little more lively.
See,
And I just want to shout out, we have such a great group here at AMATS. Craig started it, and Aaron's continued it, and he's just been amazing, and Christine and John, Chelsea, and just everyone. It's just a really fun group to work for, and I'm sad to leave, so. But it'll be off to new adventures, but you're in good hands with these folks right here. They are making waves and doing cool stuff, so.
So some things for traffic engineering. If you haven't ridden your bike down Pine Street, the protected bike lane pilot project is up for the month of September. The plan is to take it down beginning of October, first week of October, before the snow comes. So go take a look at that. Let us know what you think. That project, which is a joint effort between DOT and the municipality of Anchorage, and with the partnership with Bike Anchorage and a consultant team, is now starting into the process of looking at phase 2, which will be next summer. Likely, it's looking like downtown streets. A few of the downtown streets we are starting to be looking at, and it will be a more robust process, website, other things that we weren't quite able to do with this really quick turnaround this summer. But more to come on that. Feel free to reach out if you have comments that you'd like to share. And that is on the Moose Loop, that section of Pine Street. So go ride the Moose Loop. They are having a Moose Loop Trail Challenge at the end of the month. You're welcome to go join that, support the Anchorage Park Foundation, who does a lot to advocate and help fund a lot of improvements in our parks. And then the last thing is winter is coming up. Snow tires, studded tires are able to be put on starting in October 30th. Sometimes in the past, I've issued orders that have allowed snow tires to go on before then. Forecast so far doesn't look like we're going to get snow before then, so unless anything changes, September 30th is when you can put some studded tires on your vehicles or snow tires. Yeah. So studded tires, I guess that's what the focus is. So those are what I got for traffic engineering. Any other committee comments? Okay, how about public comment? Anyone from the public would like to comment? It's been a little bit quiet from the public today, so it looks like none of those. So that means that we're ready to adjourn. It is 4:04 and we are adjourned.
Thank you.